Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. Alrighty, tonight we've got a few things going on. We've got a little bit of news we wanted to cover, and then we're going to get into a new gun review, talking about something new out on the road from Smith & Wesson, and we're then going to get into a few training things. Now, when we get into the training things, I've got to be honest with you folks. YouTube is not a big fan of me handling guns live on stream, and in order to demonstrate these training things, it's much easier for me to do with a prop instead of sitting here like that. So because YouTube doesn't really want me to handle a firearm on stream, I've got to come up with the next best thing. We're going to transition over to Rumble for the second part of the stream, for the last part of the stream. But I want to kick off in the beginning here. We've got a whole lot of stuff that's been going on in the last little while. Also, we've got a friend of ours going to be joining us tonight. If you're not familiar with him, he's a real trip. It's a gentleman named Sniper. He's out of the west side, and we were getting things lined up in the studio in the back room beforehand. I will say this. A lot of the reason why I wanted to pull this stream tonight is because there's been a lot of news, and if you haven't followed it closely, you haven't seen certain things, or you haven't noticed connecting the dots or putting everything sort of together, so to speak. And that's where we're going to have a little bit of stuff to put together tonight. We're going to color tab A and slot B and get everything all organized. We are currently, again, live on both channels, YouTube and Rumble, having a little bit of fun. As we go, we'll try to work that out to the best of our ability. Last weekend, if you didn't see last weekend, we did a late show Friday, and we also did a show Sunday here, parts 1 and part 3. Part 2, part 2 was over on Sniper's channel. We did a tag team debunking the experts, going back and forth, reviewing the testimony of a firearms expert or sworn statement or sworn affidavit or whatever the official name for the document is, of a highly sanctified, very self-impressed firearms expert that when you read it, it was kind of cringeworthy. So we did that. You can look back on that stream. Like I said, part 1 and part 3 are on my channel. Part 2 is over on Sniper's channel in the Sniper's Nest on Rumble. We did them as Rumble exclusives because we were demonstrating and showing and doing a lot of hands-on show and tell things with pew-pews. And we know how the algorithm feels about real live pew-pews being used. But then again, when you're trying to teach and educate, and it's kind of hard not to. I mean, I use them in the classroom all the time, so there we go. So without any further ado, I do believe I'm seeing Sniper is joining us here in the chat. Come on in. Welcome aboard, sir. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Where am I? What's going on? How am I here? What? Hi, Sully.
There you go. Evening, sir.
How are we doing, chat? Let's see here. I shielded it on the Twitters.
Oh, you pumped it on the Twitter.
But I did not drop it in all the Discords, so I'll take a moment and do that. Meanwhile,
okie dokie.
I am Sniper of Sniper's Nest. I think it's technically like Sniper's Nest 6063 on YouTube, though I haven't been doing a lot of content there recently, though that may change. I don't want to showbiz myself. And Sniper's Nest on Rumble. I also participate frequently in the Council on Future Conflicts on the Future Conflict channel on YouTube and Rumble. And I am a microscopic YouTuber that nobody really gives a flip about.
But we have fun when we stream together, so why not?
Indeed.
And I think you'll like some of the stuff we've got put together for tonight. The first thing I want to do, we've all heard about it and we've all read about it, and there's been lots of drama. I want to sort of distill down some of the details of the little Kansas City parade shooting. If you didn't hear, the Kansas City Swifts won the Super Bowl. Okay, the Chiefs. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I keep at the beginning of the stream. Shit.
I keep wanting to call them the Kansas City Swifts. I don't know.
No, go with it. But warn me next time.
I hear you. And Mel is already joining us over here in the Rumble chat. She said hello for the evening. She is back at work. She has been working her little mouse fingers to the bone recently. Um, and I will say, not making cups. I'm not the demanding boss. Everyone else is. But she does make beautiful tumblers. So we'll say that. Yeah.
Oh, indeed. Coffee's over here for when I finish my tea.
There you go. She does make lots of beautiful tumblers for us. So we've got to give her credit for where credit is due. She is our favorite mouse in the entire wide world. So, and she is also my favorite student. Anyway, so we had a little bit of an incident at the Super Bowl parade. Okay, fair enough. We know all about that. And if you were following it at all, you would know there were shots fired outside Union Station after the victory celebration. One person, unfortunately, was killed, a 23-year-old mother of two, who was a local DJ. Basically, no indication whatsoever that she had any fault whatsoever in this. She was just the wrong person in the wrong crowd at the wrong time, and unfortunately, every bullet stops eventually, and this one stopped in her, at least one. There were 33 people injured. 22 of those were by GSWs, and on the other side of the point, for the other 11, chances are were either falls or trampled or knocked down or jumping.
Yeah, probably tramples.
Twisted ankles, skin knees, whatever the case may be. We got the total number transported. So, okay. 6 of those were in serious condition. Now, 11 of the 33 injured, or 11, of the 22 GSWs were children between 6 and 15. 11 of the 33, were children between 6 and 15. 9 of those were gunshot wounds. So apparently, for whatever reason, somehow, somewhere, it turned into basically a free fire zone outside Union Station.
Yes. And am I allowed to interject yet, or am I supposed to wait?
Well, let me see if we can't get there, because I've got a whole bunch of information. I've read probably 72 articles on this. I've even got the affidavits and the warrants on them. So the day of the event, there were 3 people initially detained on scene. 2 of those 3 were juveniles who had been charged with weapons charges and resisting arrest. The 3rd was released when it was determined that they were not involved. So, okay. 3 people on scene, 2 juveniles. Now, they were just charged with weapons charges and resisting arrest. Now, those juveniles, they're not releasing their names or any information about them because they're juveniles.
Yeah, or they would have to release it as John Doe anyway, yeah.
Yet, those same youngsters, those fine youngsters, had what was that top? Weapons charges. Mm-hmm. So we have people who are so young that we have to protect their identity, yet so old they're carrying weapons and able to take a life. And that's problematic in my book. And we'll see kind of where this all goes here in a minute. Mm-hmm. If you followed the channel for a while, you know I always say there's a formula. You want to look for problems related to firearms. Quit blaming firearms as a whole. Go to a subset. Prohibited possessors and too young possessors. That is where the vast majority of these problems come every single time.
And a very large correlation of that is going to combine in gangland.
Right. And as we go through here, we look a little bit further into it. In addition to our 2 juveniles who have been detained on scene, there were 2 more arrests made yesterday. Both of these individuals, one's 18, so he shouldn't be running around with a gun, and the other one is 22, barely old enough to be running around with a gun. But he's got previous weapons charges. Not sure if he was a prohibited possessor or not. That's still in determination. But he does have previous charges for being in a fight and waving a gun around at people and doing sort of antisocial things like that. Now, both of these individuals have been charged with second-degree murder in the death of the unfortunate young lady. In addition to that, they've been charged with unlawful use of a weapon and 2 counts each of an armed criminal action, which is basically being done with a gun. Imagine that. So we come through, and again, these individuals, the 18 and 22-year-old, well, they were the ones charged with murder. Now, I read their stories and the arrest warrants related to them because I've got those arrest warrants. They will, as always, be posted in the next 24 hours up on the Gun Club Locals page. That way, if you want to read the documents for yourself, read them for yourself. I'm also going to post some really interesting information up about Kansas City on the Locals page. It'll be up there for anyone's perusal. I'm sorry. I want to get the facts out, the real story. And, it is what it is. So what did the 18 and 22-year-old have to say for themselves? It gets good. The 22-year-old, he approached a group of people who he believed were staring at him. Basically, what you looking at? What you staring at? 4 or 5 people he thought were staring at him. Eventually, the verbal escalates to the point that he whips out a gun and he admits he was the first one to start shooting. He started shooting. The first person he took aim for was someone who was running away. He admits he was the first round fired, and he was shooting at someone who was running away and says, "I was just being stupid, man." That is his response to this. He's the one who kicked it off. There it is. We want to know how this happened. Now, the 18-year-old, he's in the group. And, of course, when he sees the other individual start whipping out shooting, he whips his out and returns fire in the general direction while running. He said he shot maybe only 4 or 5 times. However, he was believed to have fired the fatal shot that killed the DJ. It's been traced back to his handgun. The 2 juveniles also had firearms on scene, and there's a question as to how many of these were actually stolen or obliterated serial numbers are hot. We don't have that yet. They're working on tracing all this stuff back, as well as the other assorted firearms that were found abandoned on scene with obliterated serial numbers and everything else. So now, we want to know how this happened. Well, let's see. The 22-year-old decided that instead of someone looking at him funny saying, "I'm going to keep right on walking. We've had a great day out here at the celebration. Wasn't life wonderful? Wasn't that cool? They won the Super Bowl." No. He needs to go over and be the bigger man, be the tough guy, be the instigator of this entire cluster. So that's why he's now copped a charge for murder too. And the 18-year-old is the one who, well, he can sleep well every night knowing that he killed a 23-year-old mother of 2. Because why? Because he opened fire and started spraying into a crowd because someone was shooting at him.
Yes.
Folks, how'd this happen? 50 Shades of Stupid. Sean, go for it because I know where you want to go.
Well, so truly, the second most unfortunate part about this, aside from all the lives that are ruined, is that it's going to make Ann Coulter relevant to the normies again, because in the same vein that Ann Coulter became relevant for 5 years, that blowhard that she is, for saying that Trump was going to win before anybody else did and getting literally laughed off of Bill Maher's show, she went out and went back to Bill Maher's show and said, the only thing that you can really prove about this is these guys weren't white, because if they were white, the news would have already told you that.
Yeah.
And normies, if you're watching a YouTube channel this small that is involved in the 2A or the political space, you are at least 8 to 10 years ahead of everybody else. Normies have not noticed that white shooters get named right off the bat and everybody else gets buried. They haven't noticed that yet, and she just brought it to their attention.
Unavailable for comment.
Correct. And
Nick Sandman, unavailable for comment.
Right. And she just brought it to their attention very loudly and made herself relevant, unfortunately, for about the next 5 years.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'll be honest with you. From the side of it, I could really give a hoot, what color they are. I don't care. Let's look at the biggest question in here. A 22-year-old, again, he may be legit carrying. So I've got to hold my, criticism on him a little bit. But he whipped it out because someone was looking at him funny.
I mean, I don't
But the
care
other
either,
three,
other than how the narrative works.
the other three committed a crime the second they put the gun on before they left the house. The other,
Has Missouri actually revoked the 21-year-old rule?
I don't know if they've revoked the 21. I do know that again, for 18-year-old, I don't think can carry in Missouri. I can pull it real quickly.
Well, I know they're constitutional carry, and the only thing is the 21-year-old rule for pistols. So,
Right.
if they've revoked the 21-year-old rule, then he may not have actually done anything wrong, technically, except bad aim.
You must be 19 to conceal carry in Missouri.
Okay. All right.
And they do not, let's see here.
So they revoked it, but not all the way to him. Okay, fair enough.
Missouri is a permitless carry state. A person without a permit only commits the offense of unlawful carry if he or she knowingly carries into any federal restricted area. But 19 would be the cutoff on it. So, yeah, he crossed that. And again, that's something, I'm sure we can guess that the individuals on the show here, the stream, we might carry from time to time. Even if, some idiot is opening fire, doing this, that, and the other, guess what? We can't just open fire into a crowd. We're responsible for where that bullet goes.
Correct.
And unfortunately, I mean, you feel bad for the guy. He's 18, someone's shooting. Apparently, several people were shooting. But,
and yeah, I mean, at that point, I can't blame him for returning fire, but you got to know what's behind it.
You got to be, what's that fourth rule? What's to the side and what's behind when you're shooting.
Correct.
And, we don't know how close they were, or what was going on, or anything else. But, I hate to say it. Look, it's, a crowd full of people. A crowd full of people. Yeah. You look at, okay, we're going to just jump into Times Square a couple weeks ago. Kid is shoplifting in one of the stores in Times Square. 15-year-old kid stopped by security. He basically fights with security, draws down on them, takes off on foot. He squeezes off a couple of rounds at two NYPD officers who are giving foot pursuit. Hits a Brazilian tourist. Yes. 15-year-old with a gun, shooting at the cops, missed, hit a Brazilian tourist. The cops said, and I quote, they could not shoot back because of the crowd.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a degree. You're carrying, that's fine. There's got to be a degree of weapons discipline in that I'm justified in shooting back, but not with that target picture.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about that one, but man, that kid, just how badly because not only did he break the law, did he wind up killing a person, he also created an international incident.
Well, fortunately, I don't believe the Brazilian tourist died. They were wounded, but they were not killed. But the kid turned out to be 15 years old. And he had opened fire on NYPD in a foot chase in Times Square.
We're not allowed to talk about it, but man, fathers need to come home.
You know what? That's definitely, I'm not going to go one way or the other on that. I'm going to go with this one. And I've said this before, and I get heat for it sometimes, but I'm going to say this. 14 and up, gun-related crimes charged as adults. A 14-year-old, we all say, why would you charge a 14-year-old as an adult? I don't care if they're 14 or 18, they can kill you just as fast with that much.
That's true.
You look at the kids in Las Vegas who were involved in that, two kids who were joyriding the stolen car and killed the guy on the bike, deliberately filmed it and posted it on YouTube or on Instagram or something else.
Okay.
They got arrested. Are you ready for what one of them said to the cops? I'm a juvie. You can't do nothing to me. I'll be up by the end of the week, pig. Well, then they decided to charge them as adults, and then the kids' mothers are like, well, why are they doing that to my baby? Well, you
because they
ran a
ran
man
somebody
over
over and laughed about it.
and posted the video to YouTube. Yeah. Or Instagram or wherever. I don't TikTok or wherever they did it to. But yeah. But the thing is, unfortunately, and yeah, unfortunately, we have this wonderful point whereby, guess what? Some of these kids are feeling immune to anything.
Yeah,
Does immune sound good? I mean, now, I mean, I can even go one step further. I hadn't planned on digging this one out tonight, but I just, yeah, since we're going down the juvenile justice side, in the time I was wallowing in this and playing in this, I happened to find some other statistics. Because, of course, everyone came out and immediately blamed the firearms because, it's always the firearms did everything, right?
correct.
Um, so in my little wallow, I found some interesting statistics out of Kansas City. And, Kansas City, what's his name? Travis Kelsey came out and had a big thing about, we need better gun laws. We need better gun laws. What? 3 of the 4 people who've been arrested had no business with a damn gun.
Correct.
So we don't need more laws. We need to have aggressive enforcement of the ones we have. I'll start with that. And then I pulled up, by dumb luck and by accident, the Kansas City murder statistics for Kansas City, Missouri. Would you believe in 2020 there were 3 murderers between 0 and 16 years of age? 3. 3 people committed murder, 16 and under.
I mean, I don't know specifically about Kansas City. I know more about St. Louis.
Okay.
And St. Louis's statistics are abysmal.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often, quite often, it turns out to be that it's kind of a good thing that gangbangers don't get to go to shooting ranges, because it turns out that a lot, and I mean a lot of St. Louis shootings are wounding incidents by kids of under 16.
Right. So now that was our 2020. 3 of 176 homicides were 16 and under shooters. Or no, let's see. The next year in 2021, that's up to 6 out of 157. So the overall number of murders went down by 22, but the number of 17 and unders went doubled. That's telling me something. That is screaming something at me. But that's okay, because I've got 2022, when we have 8 out of 169. Those numbers keep going up. And we actually had 7 last year out of 182, which 182 homicides in KC-Mo last year is their record. Now, I could get into some of the other stuff and some of the other demographics on it, and I'm really not wanting to go down that road today, but it is what it is, and yeah, I know, consider the source. Minnie is getting on it. He's dating Taylor Swift, and he's repping for Pfizer. Yeah, his heart's taking a shot one way or the other at this rate. But anyway, and Ammo's Currency says good evening. He's late and somewhat heteroflexible.
Indeed. Let's see here. What's that? Just for the relevance of it.
Yes.
What is the total number of murders due 2022 for Kansas City on the Missouri side?
Kansas City, Missouri, 170.
This is St. Louis, 368.
Right. Oh, I know. Like I said, the only reason I was even in Kansas at all is that, and because they broke it down really, really well. They have a wonderfully done homicide analysis. That
Yeah.
it breaks it down by the status, what's cleared, what's not, contributing factors, whether it's argument, carelessness, different meds, drugs, meth, marijuana. They break down ages for victims, for suspects. They break down ages, genders, and the means of attack. And again, we're looking at all this stuff, and there's a lot of talk about how bad rifles are. Looking at 2023, when we had, 7 homicide suspects, 17 and under, we only had 9 rifle murders in the entire thing. So, I mean, you look
Ammo
at
is
all
currency.
the talk about assault rifles. Yeah.
Ammo as currency's got a good question there. How far back does it go? What he's actually asking you is how far back does it go?
I can go back further. Give me half a second there.
Yeah, so he's wanting to see how many years back do you have to go before you hit 1 or 0? Is what I would bet he's asking here.
Okay. Yeah, let me see here. I just went back to 2020 just because of the fact that, I mean, I was looking at the history and, the 182. Okay, how does that stack up? Because everyone wants to make a big deal of this. I'm not saying this murder is not a big deal. I'm not trying to downplay the loss of that lady's life by one damn second.
Especially since she had nothing to do with nothing.
Right. But when there's 180 a year, you can kind of be like, yeah, whatever. Okay, we're at 149 in 2019, and we had 10 suspects, 16 and under. And now, yeah. Oh, this is interesting. This is really interesting. Yeah. Would you believe that year, 57% of the offenders had a tan?
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, we are on YouTube, so I'm going to bite my tongue a little bit.
So there's some variability, and what you're going to find out here, if you find out here, what you're going to find out here, no, 157. He said 157. Is that there's going to be a 90% gangland correlation to all of the periphery of this. So you got your 2 shooters. Apparently there was 2 other potential shooters. There was 4 or 5 people in each group. What you're going to find out is, let's assume that we put together a whole group, both sides, of 12. 10 of them are going to be in a gang.
Mm-hmm. And Ammo's currency is asking only 57. I think he's talking only 57% were had a tan.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. If we go back into 2018, we're going to go with 62% had a tan and 11 16 and under out of our 138 murders that year.
Yeah, so it's been an ongoing problem. I would say 2020 actually pulled that number down as much as it did because COVID locked so many people in their house.
Possibly, yeah. But again, I come to this point, and yeah, it is what it is. We've got, if we can get those 10 a year, because where do you think these kids are learning this stuff? We got 7 the year before with a 56% ratio, but it's 7 out of 150 have a murder of 16 and under.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, this is not, I'm not picking on them to pick on them or because it was an outlier, only because I was Googling, Kansas City homicide information, and it happens to come up with a really good spreadsheet that I can look at and divulge really well.
Yeah, I would say that number went down as much as it did in 2020 because everybody was locked in their house, or a large chunk were locked in their house. But largely, if you want to end gangland, Daddy needs to come home, or Daddy. Okay, let me rephrase that. Daddy doesn't necessarily need to come home, because if daddy and mommy really just can't live with each other, okay, fine. But look at me and look at my ex-wife, right? We live in the same town. We are 3 miles apart, and the kids are at my house half of the week and at her house half of the week, and we rendezvous at her house in her kitchen once a week and just talk about whatever's been going on and things we've noticed and what have you, and make sure we're both on the same page.
So
You
daddy
bring that
is
back.
well involved, whether under roof or in some way.
Bring that
Yeah,
back, and a lot of this problem goes away.
right. And we can go through all this stuff. Again, it's not the guns. I have to come back to that point. It's not the guns, because it's even without guns, you can look at some of these statistics, and it's like knives, asphyxiation, automobiles.
Well, I mean, for anybody in Sully's audience that wants to think it's about the guns for even like 0.003 seconds, I'm going to point out to you that one of the cities with the most gun control on planet Earth, London, England, managed to beat a U.S. city literally 2 years ago, New York City, for most murders in a year.
Yeah. And
And they only have knives.
Let's go back to that discussion we just had about a 15-year-old who goes shoplifting, assaults security, and shoots at cops in the middle of Times Square.
Right.
And, I don't know, Sniper, have you done much time up around New York City or anything else up around my homeland?
No. St. Louis I have experience with.
Okay.
Seattle I have experience with. Oklahoma City itself I have experience with. Let's see here. DC I have some experience with, and Baltimore I have some experience with.
Okay. Well, I'm here to confess. I'm sort of a refugee from New York. I grew up. The house I lived in was 25, 30 miles from where Ground Zero is. I spent time, and when I was up there, I was in junior high or middle school, we called it, 7th, 8th grade. And if we didn't have school of the day for a teacher work day, especially like during winter breaks and stuff, if the Rangers were at home or the Knicks were at home and my dad was able to get tickets through his contacts or his connections, he'd leave, go to work in the morning. I'd go in, I'd catch a train into Jamaica, change at Jamaica, ride into Penn, and then take the subway down to where his office was, hang out with the people in his office until we went to the garden that night. And I was 7th, 8th grade. I would no more do that now than the man in the moon.
Well, I mean, I have been in New York State, but the closest I got to the city itself was this little hole in the wall thing. Go up the turnpike a bit, that north-south turnpike. Go up about 65 miles, and you go left off of the turnpike, and this little hole in the wall town. I mean, if you didn't know any better, you would think you were in the deep rural South.
Yeah.
A little tiny one-story warehouse that's like old brick building with a loading dock that was a piece of crap. And I dropped a load of these organic, like they were. They were energy drinks, but they weren't like monsters. So guys, you remember those packets of pills with like the ginseng and the taurine and the blah 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 energy pills? This was the organic hippie drink version of that.
Okay.
And that was the only time I was ever in the state of New York.
Okay.
Bypassed the city in its entirety.
Yeah. And see, again, I grew up, like I said, I didn't live in the city, but I mean, to me, the city was normalcy. It was, very much, I mean, my mom worked in the city, and there were times that, again, if I was off school and she had a meeting she had to go to, in elementary school, we took the train into New York. Yeah. Me and mom, and, I had to bring stuff to do, and I didn't have tablets back in those days, but, I had to bring a book with me and then spent the day, spent part of the day in the conference room, reading the book. And then the woman at the switchboard, I think her name was Evelyn, thought that I was just the nicest thing in the world. And so she had me down there literally at the switchboard with the incoming calls, helping her sort out incoming boxes of mail.
Nice.
Yeah, going through the, it was what it was. So again, New York City to me is nothing. And I've got a good friend of mine, went to high school with him, super nice guy, Marine, fought over in Storm Shield and everything else for a while right after we got out of high school together. And, he and I played hockey back in the day. He just recently retired from NYPD, probably about a year and a half ago. Post-COVID, he told the wife, who also grew up there, went to school with us. So again, this is a very normalcy to us.
We're getting the hell out.
No, even worse. It is so bad. They lived outside the island. They lived out of New York City, out on the island where we went, where we lived. And he told her if she had to go into the city for something, blah, 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 that's fine. Go in. But by all means, you better get your ass out of there before dark. Number one. Number two, do not bring the kids into the city under any reason. And their kids are teens. Don't bring the kids with you into the city for any reason whatsoever, because you can't watch your own back and watch them at the same time.
Relevant. I mean, that sounds...
Now, that's honestly an NYPD sergeant telling his wife, if you've got to go in alone without me, you do it, but you get out of there as fast as you can, and don't bring the kids in there with you because you don't have anyone to cover your six.
I mean, that's fine. That's...
And that's
honestly, that sounds like St. Louis, because 368 murders, and remember, only about a tenth the population. St. Louis, as far as per capita, has led the stats for a long time until New Orleans beat them recently. But everybody thinks of New York and Chicago as being the top of the leaderboard, but they're really not per capita, because that tiny little St. Louis just absolutely. If you brought the population of St. Louis up to New York City, it would be 4,000 to 4,500 murders a year by firearm alone. It's just crazy. That said, I want to, if I'm allowed to, I want to address a thing that Lishi Pai said. Who shoots a cop in the first place? The Breonna Taylor situation in Louisville, Kentucky. The boyfriend who shot the cops was cleared because it was a clean shoot.
It was a clean shoot, 100%.
It does happen that the cops are doing shit they shouldn't do.
Well, that's the old story we were talking about before we went on. There's lawful but awful. That was an awful thing, but it was within the scope of the law.
And it was one of those funny things where self-defense law, the way it works, meant that literally both sides of that shooting were legal.
Yes.
Both sides were.
Yes. And again, that's one case in point.
Another one down in Florida not too long after that, actually. And I think there was one in Texas. Those are the only three I know about real recently.
There was one there, and I mean, there's been a couple, and this is unfortunate.
No dying. That's not authorized. You're muted. You have dolioitis.
Yeah, I'm muted for the cough.
Mm-hmm.
But the situation was, the cops made mistakes on that, but it was honest mistakes. And when you look at all the documentation of it, and I read that, if y'all haven't figured out by now, I'll pull the documents and say, okay, I don't care what the media told me, because, they jumped to this whole thing. And, one of the media said today, well, they had these two juveniles for no reason whatsoever, and now they're charging these two adults. They don't know what they're doing. No, they had the two juveniles because they had weapons. Yep. That's still a charge. Maybe they weren't the ones who shot the female, the DJ, but,
And whether anybody agrees with that or not, it is the state of the law currently. I have my own issues with that, but it is the state of the law currently. They did break current law, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I'm not throwing. I'm not trying to throw a whole lot of shade on the Louisville PD. They did one or two things that were like a little bit. Maybe you should
Well,
have done this better, but at the same time, understaffed, overworked, and they were within their rights. But Breonna Taylor's boyfriend was also within his rights, and so
right.
when you look at that and you break it down by the law, and there's a lawyer who does self defense law only, and named Andrew Bronca,
Oh,
here
we're
on YouTube,
quite familiar with Mr. Bronca. A
and
big fan of his.
he will look at that situation and he will tell you that everybody that pulled a trigger in that particular situation, both the guy that shot at the cops and the cops, nobody broke a law.
Right.
And it's just the way it is.
Now, the funny thing is, and I will say this, one of the biggest complaints I've heard about the cops on that one was the fact that, well, they had a bunch of, 40-something-year-old desk jockeys who were not as well trained as, say, a technical SWAT team.
Yeah, understaffing had become a problem in Louisville. That is totally true.
Well, that the other side of the coin was they were doing 5 locations at once, and that was considered the lowest risk, and so they used the desk jockeys instead of the tack boys.
Yeah, but
Now,
there was also an argument they should have just sat on her place and hit all the others and done her place in daylight.
Right, but again, the converse argument of that was once word gets out that they're popping places, evidence is burning and going down toilets. So we can debate that all day long, and that's a tactical decision, and I've been in the room for that tactical decision. Now, there was a lot said about how those, if they had like real SWAT guys there, it never would have gone as bad and Breonna wouldn't have gotten killed. Dude, if you had real SWAT guys there with 30-round ARs instead of old detectives with 5-shot 38 Smith & Wesson Model 60s, we can talk about how that would have gone, but you can guess.
They'd have both been dead.
First of all, the knock on the door, they would have come through the door a hell of a lot faster. Trust me, SWAT guys are really good at vaporizing doors, making a hole where there used to be a wall. Number one. Number two, when they come in sweeping with that long gun, I get news for you. If they're taking fire at that point, first of all, Sergeant Mattingly wouldn't have been hit because there would have been someone with a vest on, with a better vest, I should say. Mattingly had his vest on, but it took him in the leg. But on the other side of that coin, dude, the return fire instead of 5-shot specials, a couple of 9mm, yeah.
No, he'd have probably, let's say this, he'd probably got some off. He might have got the guy in the leg still, but he wouldn't have lived. There would have been entirely too much firepower going down the way.
That hallway would have been, And, again, he might have gotten the shot off, but again, the next question is.
Yeah, he lived. She didn't. He lived, and he wouldn't have.
Now, if you saw the footage of when it went bad, they got hung up in the fatal funnel going in because their breach was crapola.
This is true. To be fair, Breonna and her boyfriend also got hung up in the same fatal funnel because they were hung in the hall.
Yeah.
It did. That is one of the most classic, it broke both ways the whole way through the shooting.
And again, oh, come on, Ammo. I'm still at the point of saying, and I'll say it, you know what? Yeah, there's some that are real assholes, and there's some that don't deserve to literally, do anything. They, on the other side of that coin, we ask, we all want the sausage, and no one wants to watch them how they make it. Some of the biggest people I know who are the most anti-cop in the world, I'll always come back with the thing is, okay, they're awful. How do we fix it?
Make their chiefs electable, make their under chiefs electable, just like sheriffs and under sheriffs.
Okay.
Because a election, them being electable positions instead of subject to the city council means they have to listen to the voters, not the city council, on whatever the city council wants them to do. It gives you an extra layer of accountability in that you can directly attack them through the ballot box instead of them doing the
Right.
ring around the rosy of the chief goes, well, it's the mayor, and the mayor goes, well, it's the city council, and the city council goes, well, it's the chief, and nobody is ever held accountable. End qualified immunity.
Well,
Re-
I would
remove
say I
remove
would say we
nearly
need
all
to.
concealed carry permitting and open carry permitting, and armed neighbors are polite.
Right.
Oh wait, was I
Night.
not supposed to actually answer that?
No, I'm fine with that. Good night, Margaret. Hello, Roy Rat. I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you, sir. I will say this: some of the things I'll agree with you on. If electable is so much better and less corrupt, tell me how Washington happened. I'm just going to play the devil's advocate. Number one. Number two, the qualified immunity side, I go 50-50 on. I agree it needs to be restricted a great deal. However, if every Tom, Dick, and Harry that you're in a situation with can file a lawsuit against you, you'd basically vaporize PDs.
No, you wouldn't.
If you think of every person that they have interaction with is going to file a lawsuit and they have to defend it, how do we pay for that?
Sully. Okay, so qualified immunity and sovereign immunity didn't exist in this country for over 125 years.
Right.
And in fact, the founders were very much against any sort of sovereign immunity, qualified immunity, judicial immunity, prosecutorial immunity, all of them. They were against it. They were very much against
Right.
it because this was all embraced by the king. Remember, the king was all, and the king had all of those immunities, and they wanted no part of it. The way it worked was simple legal liability, and the thresholds to actually prove liability are actually pretty tough. They are tougher than
Right.
you think they are. They are tougher than the media has programmed people to think they are. So qualified immunity didn't need to be a thing, and up until
Okay.
qualified immunity, there'd only been 3 sheriffs or marshals ever sued.
Okay, but now with what you're saying, I see where you're going. Here's my question. If every time you get sued for anything, regardless of whether it's justified or not, you have to pay to defend it.
That's
So
what
far, so good.
if you're gonna have the unions anyway,
Okay.
and I'll let you keep your unions. Let the union pay for it.
Okay. But the thing is, you run out of money after a while. You'd be surprised when you look at some of the lawsuits that get filed, and trust me, I have. For example, lawsuits against corrections officers. You literally have an entire population that has nothing to do all day but sue because I didn't get such and such cereal.
All right, so now here's
Sue because my mail takes too long to get to me.
all right. So now here's where I go.
If you don't defend it, you have to get a judgment against you.
Okay, now here's where I go completely the other way in
Okay.
ways that make libertarians really mad.
Okay.
For those of you who haven't figured it out, I am a libertarian, and I am not a back the blue guy. So here's where I go.
Back it reasonably.
Here's where I go in the other way that makes libertarians' blood boil. When the country was founded, there were 9 felony crimes, and they were all punishable by death.
Okay.
End the prison industrial complex. If these people have really done things that bad, kill them and let God figure it out.
I could see a lot of that going on.
And I hate to say that as somebody who at this point doesn't really trust the state anymore, but it's the best you got. The
Right.
prison industrial complex is fueling all of this nonsense.
Well, See, I don't know how much of it is the prison industrial complex. That's a
It's
whole
making it more and more about lobbying to create more and more imprisonable offenses.
right.
Go back to the 9.
Okay. But the thing is, at the time of the 9, we, I will say, society at that point, it was the old story of our Constitution. Everything was written for a moral and decent people. And I mean, look at what's going on now. We don't have a moral and decent people. You know,
Yes, I am well aware what Unicor is.
Unicoi, yeah,
Yes,
right. And I mean, was it
and they
California?
lobby.
Yeah, and I mean, was it California prison system is like the prison industrial complex, unbelievably so.
I mean, by and large, we imprison people for longer for smaller crimes than anybody in the Western world. We imprison more of our population by a large chunk than the whole rest of the Western world. Now, I'll say this. Our prisons are generally more polite affairs than, say, the United Kingdom or France. And trust me, never go to a prison in France.
Or anything in the Eastern Bloc, I mean.
Oh, we're not even talking about the East.
Yeah.
We are strictly on the West right now. And Navalny just died in a gulag, unavailable for comment. We'll leave them to their own devices. But
I mean, Coach Red Pill unavailable for comment.
Correct.
42 years old. We think it was pneumonia. Well, did you get him any medical attention? Why?
Correct. So let's focus in on the West. Out of the entirety of the West, we imprison more of our people by a lot for longer sentences by a lot, with a criminal code that with a combined set of local, state, and federal criminal codes that has inspired a website called 3feloniesaday.org.
Right.
It is impossible. Sully, you break the law. You commit a felony every day, whether you know it or not. It is impossible
I may
for
not
anybody.
Have today because I never left the house.
It is nearly impossible for you to not commit a felony every day at this point. Strip it back. We have lobbied our way into a prison industrial complex that continues to lobby for harsher and harsher punishments for what are effectively bullshit things.
Right.
Okay. Here in Utah, they are considering a 15-year prison sentence if you call in a bomb threat or yank a fire alarm at your school.
Damn.
15 years.
Now, you see, my thing is...
For being a dumbass that just doesn't want to go to a class.
Right. I'm fine with whittling down a lot of the charges. On the other side of that coin, what we're seeing, some of these charges, and especially in the juvenile justice system, and I think that sheriff in Florida after the Christmas shooting said it best. He had a 14-year-old who had killed his 23-year-old sister in front of family.
Mm-hmm.
The kid had his first gun charge at 12, had numerous arrests between 12 and 14. He said, and I quote, "The juvenile justice system can't hold him." So, yeah, I'm 13, 14 years old. I can do whatever I want. I'm going to get right back out. They can't hold me, and I'm going to go do something else. But I'm a juvie, so it's okay. That's where we're seeing this.
Bring back corporal punishment. If he ain't got a dad there, and make it legal for his next door neighbor to beat him within an inch of his life. Yeah. That said, we could derail this for like 20 hours, and you had more things you wanted to do.
Yeah, I did. I had a couple of other things to cover, a couple of other little more positive, more interesting things. We've got a new gun to review out, and it is the Smith & Wesson Equalizer. Smith & Wesson Equalizer came out. It's available with or without the thumb safety. If it does have a thumb safety, it's an ambidextrous version. It comes in at about 23.9 ounces. It's got the underside here, got the pick rail. One thing that's really interesting is the very aggressive cuts up in here for chambering, with very good grip. Sniper, no guns on stream.
Well,
We're on YouTube.
Shit. How do we do that? We'll have to wait until
We'll do the transition. That's why we're transitioning. Yeah.
We'll have to wait until but yeah, I've got my 380 shield here, and remind me and put this back up, and then we'll let everybody look at the 380 shield. It looks like they have learned a lot of lessons off the 380 shield EZ, because you look at that and I look at this, and it's the same damn product.
Well, this is really interesting because I've got the Smith full 9mm EZ. Now, the big difference up on here, these grooves are much more aggressively textured in. Number one, it's got the front serrations as well, much more aggressively textured in. I love that design on any gun, just for if you have to clear a malfunction, if you have to do something. We know manual dexterity has gone to hell. We know that grip strength has gone to hell. And, you know, it is what it is. The thumb safety on it, I like. It's a very nice, wide, pronounced thumb safety. With it being so pronounced, it's a very hard one to accidentally miss in the heat of battle. Very positive.
And ambidextrous.
On that, and ambidextrous, yep. It comes with a UPLA loader and 3 different magazine choices. It comes with a 10-round magazine for those people living in not-so-free states like California. It comes with a 13 and a 15-round magazine. Comes with one of each. Also comes, of course, with the cable lock chain and all that good stuff, and cutesy little owner's manual and all that. Honestly, you know, it's funny. We got Mel in the chat. She's like, yeah, they're both great guns. She shot my 9mm EZ. Now, the interesting thing about this, the 9mm EZ is the lighter chambering.
Lighter spring, yeah.
Yeah. This one is also a lighter spring. It's not quite as light as the EZ, but it's lighter than, say, a standard 9mm Glock 19. The shooting of it, very nice. It's, comes with the pre-cut for the optics on top if you want to add those in for a holosun. It also has a standard Smith 3-dot sights on it. Overall, they're coming in price point now at about $500. You can find them in the 450s. To me, it's definitely, well worth the money. If you're not a Smith person, I see Roy doesn't like the Smith equalizer. Honestly, if you're looking for a 9mm, especially if you're really like about the light cocking, the easy cocking, or the easy chambering, easy rack, whatever you want to call it, this one is all of that instead of the 8-round capacity for the EZ. It's this one. And again, it comes in, I believe, at around 23 ounces unloaded. So
nice.
Definitely it's polymer frame.
So, Roy, I don't want to hear about your lock, and here I'll do this off camera, but 2 fingers, very, very easy. I love that about that thing, and it sounds like they learned a lot of good lessons with this thing. I'm liking it.
It's I joke about it that it's the EZ's Part 2 more developed brother.
Yeah. The holes being cut in the top, that's new. The front grip part for sliding it, operating the slide from the front, that's much more defined.
And you can see on that picture there how well defined that is too.
Yes. But yeah, I look at that and I see my 380 Shield EZ, and of course I have the full size M&P 9, and then I have the M&P Shield 380 EZ, and I love them both for different reasons, but I'm liking what they've the balance they seem to have struck here. I also will say this: there are a lot of people that don't like that safety on the back to make
the grip safety. Yeah.
I love it. You know why? You know what it teaches people to stop doing? Being limp-wristed dicks.
Well said, sir.
It won't
Um,
fire.
yeah. And the other thing I will say with this one is, Mel's chatting off here. I have the EZ as a classroom training gun. I use it with a lot of my newer shooters. That's the first time gun. They're going to start with that, especially if they're not really comfortable, confident chambering. Let's work on that, get the mechanics down, get the fundamentals down, then build off of that. When I saw this one, it definitely jumped out at me. It's getting really good reviews. Reliability wise, I'm 500 plus rounds in on it. Have not had a problem or a stoppage at all.
Nice.
So, and again, for what it is, and again, I see Roy in there. Some people like grip safeties, some don't. That's a tomato kind of thing.
I like it. I like it for the learning aspect of it because I watched it in real time with my ex-wife because she tried to limp it, and it wouldn't fire, and she would just look at me and I'd be like, "Grip it," and then it would fire, and it taught her grip the damn gun. I love that part of it. I do get why there are people who don't like it,
right?
But it gets rid of this,
right? Now, the one thing I will say on it is the grip safeties that I prefer are the ones that go more up onto the beaver tail.
That's a fair criticism.
Like the 1911. That design of a grip safety, I'm not a fan of as much. But the thing I like on this one is, especially I got it as a classroom workaround gun. In the big scope of things, though, it's one of those things that, we tried it out. Mel tried it out. She liked it. The 10-round mag you see fits flush. If you go with the other ones have slight extensions to them. The 13 or 15 fit my hand better. The 10, but for a new shooter, for a classroom training gun, it's going to work.
Good. I like it. I like it. I like it.
So that's what we've got on that one. Now, that, unfortunately, is as far as we can really go in the wonderful world of YouTube tonight. So, as much as we love everybody who is on YouTube, and we'd like to welcome you to come across and join the freedom of Rumble. If you're not familiar with Rumble, Rumble is a wonderful, much more free platform. It's a very free space. So, I'll leave you with this.